Okay, we are so excited to talk to Pam today. This is definitely going to be an interesting conversation because it is something that has resonated really well with our audience in the past. And it is something that is so talked about and so needed and so just everything. It's all the things. I'm very excited. So, welcome, Pam Arnold. She is the emotional eating coach. She's a qualified nutritional therapist and the host of the podcast Overcome Emotional Eating. She helps women overcome emotional eating and lose weight for good. After her first heartbreak, it can't be your last, at 19, she became an emotional eater. And then only 4 years later, she was diagnosed with insulin resistance and borderline diabetes, suffered with anxiety and panic attacks at age 25, and yo-yo dieted until age 32. If I could have $1 for every person that I have met with that exact list of struggles, oh my goodness. Pam tried all the diets out there, and that resulted in getting stuck in yo-yo body and self-loathing. She successfully reverted her diagnosis with good nutrition, lost weight, and overcame emotional eating with coaching. Now her passion and mission is to help women to stop dieting and start living their lives using the coaching tools she's been using so you can achieve mind, body, and life freedom. I just want to say amen to all of that.
Amen.
All
Standing
of that.
ovation.
Yes.
Yes.
I love it. So welcome, Pam. You're joining us from just outside of London, right?
Yes, I'm in the UK.
Awesome.
But
Awesome.
I wasn't born here, so I want to say that I am originally from Brazil, so you're going to have an accent
I
in
wondered. I
this
detected some
episode.
kind of external accent besides that. Excellent. So
Yeah.
Brazil to London, that's a big, big jump.
Well, I learned English in America, so I have some words in American style and a lot of British with the Brazilian all together.
Oh my goodness. So you've been around the world, literally.
I have, yeah.
So
That's amazing.
this story of your life is so similar, like I said, to so many women I talk to. And so many of them don't recognize that if they could just manage the emotional eating part, their body would respond the way they want it to. And the insulin resistance and pre-diabetes, metabolic syndrome, I just heard a statistic the other day, and it was something like 60% of adults could be
Wow.
diagnosed with metabolic syndrome.
Oh,
That's how
wow.
bad it is. So yeah, it's a big old problem, and I'm super excited to hear how you're solving it. So tell us a little more about you and what you're doing.
Cool. Yeah. So you kind of summarized my story over there. But I mean, you mentioned about my age and everything. So I'm going to say that I'm 35 now. And for the past 3 years, that's when I overcome my emotional eating. That's when I realized I was emotional eating at the first time, even though I was doing for years. But when I found coaching, the mindset coaching, not just tell you what to do, is like there's the whole mind change, the way you're thinking and feeling, that I found out that all I needed was this missing piece of my puzzle to figure out a way to lose weight and keep the weight off by managing my emotional eating and managing my emotions and my mind without having to depend on diets or anything external but myself. So until I found that out, my journey was probably what you hear a lot, which was it yo-yo dieting. I grew up in Brazil. I left the country when I was 22. So that was like 13 years ago. And I grew up just using food as a way of celebration, a connection. And I mean, I talk to people from so many different countries and cultures, and everyone is the same.
Yeah.
We use food for everything. And we, as humans, we never were taught how to feel our emotions. So when it comes to we use the food when we're kids to deal with our emotions, which is fine, because child or kids, they don't have the ability to think about their thoughts or feel their feelings. I have my niece, which is almost 7, and I asked her because she was biting her nails, and I was like, are you anxious? And she was like, what is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't know how to verbalize it. They just
No. So of course, at that time, what we learn with our parents and school and teachers is, let's just use food, let's use external things, or what they see, right? Like a lot of people use alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, sex, whatever it is. But there's a lot of people who uses food because we need the food to survive.
right.
So it becomes that coping mechanism that when we grow up as an adult, we don't question it anymore.
Yeah.
And we have so much capabilities with our brain to use our brain to process our emotions and to deal with our emotional life, that food is just become our only thing that we know, because we don't know anything else.
Right. Yeah.
So my job today is to help women and adults to how to deal with their emotions, so they don't have to use food
Yes.
to deal with them.
Yes.
That is
It
such an
it's
important thing to
fascinating.
dig into. It's fascinating.
I very much struggle with the using food as a reward thing. Yet I've fallen into that also, you
It's
know.
so easy to, and our
Yeah.
society supports it. So it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's just one of those natural things, and it's really hard. My husband caught me doing it without thinking the other day, and he's like, well, can we think of a better reward system than that? Like, well, yeah, we can, but then we had to sit down and brainstorm what we could use other than food
Right.
to reward our children for work well done. It's like, oh,
I think it's just because it's very accessible,
yeah,
Yes.
you know. But I think you have to be careful with any kind of reward system and anything that you offer. I mean, if you offer to go buy your kid a toy every time they do something well, then they start to see purchasing things as, a way to make you feel good or a way to lift your spirits, right? And so it's very much a catch-22. And I think for me anyway, I've found that it's easiest to just find balance with it and moderation. That, sometimes, yeah, it is appropriate to go get an ice cream to celebrate something. And sometimes it is appropriate to go buy that new pair of shoes that you've been wanting if you, accomplished a goal. But I think
Yeah.
if you do a little bit of everything, and maybe Pam, you can speak to this, but if you do a little bit of everything, you don't develop this like attachment or dependency on this. If I do this thing, it makes me feel this way.
yeah.
Okay, so a lot of things came up to my mind now that I want to say by you saying that. So first of all, our brain, the way it's designed, the primitive brain as being just human and alive, it works by reward.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with rewarding. The problem is that nowadays what we have to have the dopamine hit of the reward is so much more concentrated and very fast comparing to thousands of years ago.
Yes.
So thousands of years ago, for you to feel rewarded, you probably need to go and hunt and kill and wait and peel and cut and everything and cook until you're able to eat and feel the reward. So there was a delayed gratification.
Right.
Today, we have everything ready, easy to eat, available 24/7, that gives you a very instant gratification. And that is the reward mechanism. So we get into feeling good fast as much as possible instead of waiting and nurture and do the process of having a delayed gratification. So using that into eating, I love to use the urge situation. Like when you have an urge or cravings, so it's the same, exactly same thing. An urge to eat something is very urgent. So it kind of like, it asks you to have the instant gratification at that exactly moment, because otherwise your brain thinks you're gonna die.
Right.
So the way that I like to explain about the urge that we have is the urge is a reward mechanism. So the more you answer the urge by eating what's asking you to, the more you're going to ask you for, the stronger it will become, and the harder it will be for you to overcome it. So it is a condition that our brain learn, as you mentioned with the kid. If you buy a pair of shoes every time it goes well at school, he's going to learn that that's what he can ask for all the time. So I use a very similar analogy with urges with a 3-year-old boy. We go to the supermarket and the boy start asking for sweets, candy, right? Like that's how we say in America, candy. We say sweets here in the UK. So I want a candy, I want a candy, I want a candy. And then the mom was like, okay, stop screaming, here's a candy. And then that child learns that every time he screams and throw a tantrum and yell and cry, he's going to get the candy.
Right.
But for the mom, it's very uncomfortable. So the more you scream, the more uncomfortable she becomes. So the faster she's going to give the candy to the kid. When we want to stop having the urges, we need to decondition our brain for that reward. So the urge is going to come. We need to learn how to feel that urge, feel the discomfort, and not give in, not answer the urge. So that would look like the child in the shop, in the store, asking for the candy, throwing a tantrum, screaming and yelling and shouting. And then mom was like, no, you're not having it. But imagine the whole store looking at the mom and how uncomfortable she feels by having that child screaming. But she doesn't give in. She doesn't give the candy to him. And eventually that child is going to learn that he can do all the tantrums, scream and shout and cry, and he's not going to get the candy.
Right. You have to stand your ground.
Exactly. That's the deconditioning of the brain, because it's going to learn that doesn't work.
Right.
So the urges are exactly the same.
Oh, that's like a mic drop moment for me, because I mean, I'm a mom of 3, and that was, I mean, every mom has gone through that experience. And I was the mom that stood my ground and said, like, not only no, but if you keep whining, like, I'm going to make life even more miserable for you. So, and I'm a sucker for analogies. So, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head for me. Now I'm going to have to, recondition my brain to.
Isn't it interesting though that
see myself as throwing a tantrum?
Yeah.
Anytime I want to do that emotional eating. I mean, that's fantastic imagery there.
Yeah.
Well, and isn't it interesting too that most of us can be really firm with our kids. We can stand our ground at work, if it comes to like, a conflict or whatever, and stand in our truth. But when it comes to standing our ground to our own urges, to our own brain, we are complete puddles of goo, and we just give in, and we just become doormats to our own urges.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love that. I love that.
Well, that comes another piece of the work, right? Is the relationship with yourself.
Right.
And how we don't trust ourselves anymore to do what we say you're going to do. So we just throw the towel and whatever, gonna eat everything. I already messed up. So we have a lot of thoughts that creates the urge and creates the over desire for food that perpetuates their cycle.
Right. Now I've learned I did a kind of a deep dive, not a super deep dive, but to understand emotional eating about a year ago, because I had several clients that were struggling with it. And I wanted to make sure that I knew as much as I could about it to help them. And what I learned was that usually they're turning to food because it's going to give them a very specific feeling. So if they're surrounded by chaos and the world just feels really chaotic, and they want certainty, and they know for certain if they eat that cookie, they will feel a certain way. Like it's very certain, it's very concrete, they know it. Or if the other side of that coin is if they're bored and life just feels lame, they need some variety, they need some excitement. Food can also offer that, because you can try all the donuts, you can have 15 different flavors of donuts, or 31 flavors of ice cream, or whatever it is. So there's different feelings, different what am I trying to say, what is that, anyway, that people are searching for. Have you found that?
Yes. But the way I like to say it comes back to the gratification, right? So we don't know how to deal with our feelings. So usually the main ones are negative ones. We do eat because we are happy and excited and want to celebrate, but mainly is negative emotions. Is anxiety, is stress, is boredom, whatever it is. Everyone has their own top 3 emotions that they usually eat. So what I found is, because they don't want to wait and because they don't know how to deal with the emotion, it goes exactly what you said. The certainty is, if I eat the cookie, I'm going to feel better now, but that feeling doesn't last long.
Right.
And then you feel even worse afterwards. Plus a
Horrible
layer of
spiral.
judgment. Yeah. Plus a layer of self-loathing, but a layer of beating yourself up. So much more layers that makes you feel even worse. And then, how do I feel better? Oh, I need to eat. And then again, the vicious circle, it perpetuates. So if we know how to deal with our emotions, and we can wait for the gratification, because if you don't emotional eat, you're not going to overeat. And if you don't overeat, you're not going to put weight on. A lot of people who struggle with emotional eating are overweight and wants to lose weight. I do have clients who are not overweight, but they still struggle with emotional eating. It works exactly the same way. How can I wait? Like learning to wait for the gratification by not eating now and feel good when I step on the scale, and feel good afterwards because I'm not bloated, because I'm not having a headache, or whatever it is that how your body reacts by eating so much sugar.
Right.
So it is the delayed gratification and knowing what to do with the feelings when you are going through a negative wave of vibration. So the other thing that I not the analogy, I'm not sure if it's an analogy or not, but feelings, emotions, they are just vibrations in our body. It's a chemical reaction that is happening in our body. Whatever that you're feeling. If you're feeling stress, your cortisol levels go high, and then you have palpitations, you have all the adrenaline in your body. So every feeling, that is some kind of chemical reaction in your body and a vibration. If we think about vibration being in your body, and that is a result of a chemical reaction of hormones and neurotransmitters and all of that. When you eat, especially sugar, we don't emotionally eat with broccolis and chicken, right? When we emotionally eat with broccoli, with sugar and flour, what happened is we have the same response. We have insulin coming out of your pancreas very quickly. You have your dopamine and serotonin in your brain. So you still have the same chemical reaction in your body, that because the digestive part of your body, the main part, what I'm trying to say is digestion is the priority. When you eat, your body has to digest the food. Right. So whatever you are feeling, as soon as you eat that sugar, the cookie, that vibration from the digestion and from the hormonal and neurotransmitter, what's happening when you eat, takes over whatever emotion you're feeling. So it kind of numbs out, push down. So you have that response of the cookie going on in your body. And because you digest, as soon as you digest that and you didn't solve the problem of your negative emotion, it comes back again. and it might come back in a different way, might come back even stronger.
Yeah.
So you're not solving one problem and you're creating another problem.
Yeah. So it's interesting because the stress hormones, when they're released, digestion becomes a very low priority, and it actually slows your digestion and just basically shuts it off, for lack of a better term, so that you can have energy to your muscles, so that your heart rate can go up, so that your blood pressure can go up, so that you can be ready to take on whatever threat is coming. And I've never thought about the fact that when you eat, that would trigger that to stop. Because I'll be honest, I've told Ashley this before. I have always struggled with understanding emotional eating. I've never emotionally eaten myself. I don't get emotional feelings out of food. I like food a lot. I'm a foodie. I like really good food, but I get more of a feeling out of the experience. Like, I really like to go to a really nice restaurant and have really good service and a nice bottle of wine and that whole thing. That's what like gets me, gives me my dopamine hit. It's not the actual food. And so that was part of why I went on that deep dive a while ago, because I was like, I need to understand this. I need to be able to, but I just connected that of why, because it's not even, it's a chemical reaction.
Yep.
It's a chemical reaction in your body.
And it's the same thing. Like I have to draw parallels here with impulsive buying.
Yeah.
The same as, emotional eating, is that we have this impulse. And sometimes it's not, sometimes it is that emotional impulse that gets people to go and shop instead of eat. There's emotional shopping, just like there's emotional eating, and it's the same. It's the same thing that's going on. You're just finding gratification in shopping rather than in eating.
Yes.
But
Ashley, do you find that people do it because that's like their family, like how people emotionally eat because that's what they were always rewarded with was food? Do you find that they shop emotionally because mom always took me out and bought me a present when I did a good job?
There's kind of the whole spectrum. So yes, there are people who were taught to shop, and that's their way of tying into this childhood, the neurobiology of the brain. Now, like, our brain is wired to recognize those neural pathways to say that when I go shopping, when I receive a gift, that means I've been appreciated, and or whatever that association is. And so they go and do it themselves as an adult because they were taught that when they were young. But there's also, everybody is different. And, if we've read the book, The Love Languages, we know that people receive love in a different way. And where my son would rather have a back scratch and snuggles, my daughter is the don't touch me. Why don't you take me to the thrift store to see what treasures I can find? And so you can see just personality comes out in that. But I think that's where we draw the line, as with any, so drawing from my experience of dealing with people with neurodiversities, with my children and my husband, the doctors that I have talked to, I'll say, well, I have these same tendencies. How come I am not diagnosed with whatever it is? And he says, because you can cope. It doesn't stop your daily life. So even if somebody has, the love language, the gift giving love language, it doesn't mean that they are going to be, incredibly obese with a house full of stuff. No, that just means that, they can regulate in a normal mind. I shouldn't say normal. That's not.
What is normal?
In a neurotypical mind, we have the ability to self-regulate.
Right.
But when we're dealing with emotions and emotional impulses and this flood of hormones and chemicals into our body, triggered by whatever external source that is, that triggers us to emotionally eat and emotionally, impulse buy, the brain is firing on different neural pathways than a neurotypical, like what you would do in a normal circumstance. This is different. This is wired differently. And so our bodies have been trained to make itself feel better. It's all about survival. Like Pam said, it's all about
Yeah.
survival and keeping the body alive. So we have been taught that in order to survive this feeling, this situation, this feeling of anxiety or scared or scarcity or whatever it is, I need ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a survival kind of a thing that in order, I'm feeling like I'm in danger, therefore I need ice cream. I'm feeling like I'm in danger, I need to go shopping. And the parallels are absolutely, remarkable when it comes to finding those emotions. What triggered that emotion? Um, or what emotion are you feeling? Because we can eat from nostalgia too.
Yeah.
We're going down memory lane, and the next thing that we know, we're sipping wine and eating, a, a cheap chocolate pinwheels, whatever it is, simply because nostalgia triggered these emotions. It could be out of fear. That is a very big one. And that means, anxieties or anything that would make us feel like we're not okay. It could be out of guilt. It could be out of so many different things. Um, and then we layer upon layer upon layer these emotions because now we have that layer of self-loathing. So when it comes to impulse eating, impulse buying, I think Pam hits the nail on the head to be able to say, we have to be able to recognize it first and foremost for what it is and what has already been programmed into our brain. And now what do I do about it? How do I replace it? And one thing that, so we had this conversation in episode 4 of the
You
Homebod
found it. I was trying to
podcast.
find it. Yeah, it was long.
And it was one of them. Still is one of the most highly downloaded ones because I think our world is finally getting to a point where it's okay to talk about our brains and it's okay to talk about emotion and it's okay to talk about when we are not okay.
Yeah.
And to learn new coping skills and new strategies is not taboo anymore. And we're not institutionalized because people think we're quote unquote crazy when we do these behaviors. And so it's a great conversation to have to be able to say, look, you know what, you're going to have these triggers. You have been programmed, like it or not, to behave a certain way. Or you trained yourself to behave a certain way because of external stresses and sources and
Yeah.
all that. I didn't start emotional eating until I was 19 or whatever. And it's like, well, but now what do we do about it? And how do we retrain the brain? And
So
how do we
Pam,
recognize these emotions?
how did you finally, you said was,
Snap out of it.
but how did you recognize it? Because you said you didn't even realize that was the problem. And I know I have a lot of clients that tell me that they know that they eat their emotions, but I don't think that they really, really know that that's the issue. They just recognize, yeah, when I'm stressed out, I eat more. I don't think they, you know, they say that the first step is admitting you have a problem, right? I don't think they admit that it's really a problem. So how did you come to that? What did you have an aha moment?
Yeah.
Before I answer your question, just want to mention something that you said, Ashley, about how the impulse buying and overeating is so aligned, so the same. And the reason is because the way we do one thing is the way we do everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
the same brain, the same patterns, because the brain it works with patterns. So a lot of people stop emotional eating or overeating and they start over drinking or they start overspending. That's because of the way that the brain is designed. And what I would say is it's not about finding something else to get distracted, to use your impulse in something healthier, but how do we deal with the impulse feelings in the first place? Going to the root cause of the problem instead of finding distractions. So we kind of stop doing that. Usually that doesn't work in the long term.
I see that so much in the gym world. I've found that a lot of people that get super into the bodybuilding physique competitions, they are recovering from another type of addiction, because it does take that
Yeah.
type of a pattern and that type of a lifestyle to be obsessively doing something. And unless your brain is programmed that way, it's very challenging for someone who has a, you know, what did you call it? Neuronormal or whatever.
Neurotypical. Yeah.
Neurotypical. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But there is another word called neuroplasticity,
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
which for me is amazing. That means that we can always change the way we are thinking. We can always change. No one is broken. No one is fixed. We can change.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing, because that gives us hope that we can always improve and change and evolve,
Yes.
grow,
Yes.
and get out of our bad habits, quote unquote, right?
I think it's also incredibly important to sit down and write a list of things that you would consider celebration without tapping into your vices. So, one of the things that we learned from another interview on the podcast with Dr. D. Franey is, we talked about when we do something that could, build a new neural pathway, we need to celebrate to show our body that instead of when I was stressed and I ate or I went shopping, that reinforces a negative behavior that I recognize as negative. So if I do something else, then I need to celebrate that so that it triggers my brain to say, "Oh, okay, now I'm getting the result that I wanted from eating, the result that I wanted from shopping. I'm now getting that same result from doing something different." And that's how we retrain that, that's how we take advantage of that neuroplasticity. But then to come up with a list of, okay, then what does that celebration look like? Because here again, we're talking about celebrating where a lot of people rip into food or go buy something to celebrate. Celebration can look so different. And especially, and this is where we get into those of you who know the biochemistry of the body, like what else can we do to trigger that dopamine, to trigger that hit of, oh, this makes me feel so good, um doing a little happy dance in the middle of the living room, giving each other a high five, going and finding, something that ties in with your love language. But I mean, going for a run can make you feel so much better than eating a cookie. But like you said, Pam, it's that delayed gratification. You have to go for a run and feel like crap running before you feel better. Whereas I could sit down and eat this cookie and feel better right now, but it's reinforcing negative behaviors. So I love to help clients come up with a list of, here are some things that are considered celebrations that reinforce positive behavior that you can do and employ to help your brain change without including those negative vices, without including food, without including those impulse instant gratification type behaviors.
Yeah.
Do you help clients with anything similar? Like how do you help them start changing that mindset now that they've recognized, okay, I am emotionally eating and this is the emotion that usually triggers me. Now what? Like how do you help people start really changing that behavior?
I'm going to answer both of questions at the same time that you asked me earlier, Heather.
Okay.
So the reason I found out I was emotional, I was an emotional eater was because as I said, I was a nutritional therapist. So I graduated as a nutritional therapist. So I started my business just doing that. And then I had a client who came to me saying, I am great with my nutrition. I don't need any help with that, but I am struggling with binging. And I really want you to help me. Can you help me? And I was like, yeah, I have no idea. So for me to be able to help her, I went into what you did, Heather, like, let me learn more. I had a few ideas of how to help her from health coaching, but I wanted to go into a deeper level to help her change completely the binging. So when I started learning a lot, I found out and recognized that I was doing the same things for a long time. So that was like, oh my God, I am also an emotional eater.
That's a crappy day to figure that out.
Right.
I know.
Good, but not good.
Yeah, but in the same way that I was able to help her, I was able to help me. And that was exactly when I was able to lose weight and keeping the weight off for the first time in my life. And it's been like that for the past 3 years. So for me, it was first is the awareness and understanding that there's a lot of people who emotionally eat that doesn't seem that as a problem. So that's not a problem for you. That's great. Good for you. But a lot of people struggle with the obsessing about food, obsessing about diet, obsessing about losing weight. What do I need to eat? How much do I eat? What do I need to do? And looking for answers outside of us. And that's what I was doing, spending 24/7 Googling, searching on Instagram, trying to find a solution to my problem. And that's when I found out about emotional eating, and then I started applying the coaching tools that now I teach, that I was able to just figure out a way to overcome that emotional eating. That doesn't mean that I don't emotionally eat anymore, but I do that in a such intentional way and conscious way that is not a problem anymore. So that's when that happens to me. And then answer your question, Ashley, the way that I help my clients, first of all, they come to me already knowing they are struggling with emotional eating. So they see as a problem. They usually know what they need to do to lose weight. Most of them want to lose weight. And if they don't, they come to me because they know they are struggling with emotional eating, or they binging, or they having a very impulsive behavior with food, and that is bothering them, that is on their way to achieve other things in life, or to just feel in peace and feel present. So they come to me with the problem already. So my first step is really the awareness, and not awareness that I emotionally eat, but the awareness of when I'm hungry, when I'm not hungry, how does my body feel after I eat? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? And there's awareness of these 5 areas that we need to really dive into it and connect again. Because every time we emotional eat, what happens? We check out from our lives. That's what we use food for. We don't want to feel what we're feeling. We don't want to deal with the person. How many people overeat, emotionally eat when they are with family or with friends, whatever they right. So they think they're using food to connect with other people, but actually they're using food to disconnect from themselves, so they don't have to deal with whatever they're dealing with. There's a lot of discomfort there. So the awareness of what you were doing without even changing anything is already a big transformation. Just to be aware and noticing, if I'm going to eat right now, am I actually physically hungry? Because if hunger is not the problem, food is not the solution.
That's so simple.
Say that again for the people in the back.
If hunger is not the problem, food is not the solution.
Da-da-da!
Yes. Yes. You might be tired. You might be thirsty. You might just need to get out of that situation that you're in right now. There's a lot of things that could be going on.
Yeah, and food is not going to solve that problem. Actually, it's going to create more problem, especially if that is a problem for you. So that is the first thing. Really, we dive into connecting the body and the mind. Yeah, the body and the mind into one, paying attention, be aware, notice what is that you're feeling, give names to the feeling. Some people just like, I feel good, I feel bad. That's it. There's so many different types of emotions. So it comes back to what I was saying earlier, is that we are never taught how to deal with feelings and emotions. So we do what we know. Might be eating, might be buying, might be drinking, whatever it is. But that doesn't change the fact that we don't know what to do with our feelings. So that's why when we stop eating, we go and use another way of feeling better, right? So it's really learning how to allow those feelings, process the feelings, knowing that that's not going to kill you. The brain doesn't know the difference between your inbox with lots of emails or a tiger coming after you.
Yes.
It triggers the same feelings, but it's different.
Yes.
You're going to survive by having 1,000 emails in your inbox. But it's retraining the brain to say, if I don't eat now, I'm not going to die. It's okay to feel hungry. It's okay not to eat right now. I don't have to be eating all the time. I have clients who don't even remember how hunger feels like, because they're constantly eating.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the awareness that we need to have in the first place. And then learning how to feel our feelings, what to do with them, how the feelings are created in the first place. How do we deal with them without having to use food? And then it comes back to what you're saying, Ashley, which I always tell my clients, celebrate without using the food. What can you do to celebrate? And celebrate. We are very good at judging ourselves and beating ourselves up and making mean all the terrible things if we just eat one piece of cookie.
Right.
But how about the amount of water you drank today, that you went for a walk, or that you said no to a cupcake, or that you follow your plan, you exercise? Celebrate that.
Yeah.
I found
more than
that is one thing that, especially, like, I tend to work with very high achieving type A go women, and they're so quick to criticize themselves. They have a laundry list of things that they did not get done, that they did not do well, all the, negative stuff. I actually told one of my clients, she sent me a message and it was just, everything that went wrong that day. And I said, "What went right?" And she was like, "Oh, well, I did this and I did this." I'm like, "Okay, then that sounds like a pretty darn good day. How about we look at that part of it?" But I think we're just so conditioned to just focus on the negative and focus on our flaws. And, how many times do you get out of the shower and your eyes go straight to the one part of your body that you don't like? I mean, it takes a lot of time to get out of the shower and be like, pretty good, pretty good. Mm-hmm. We always are like, that part right there, it's still there.
yeah.
Still there, so
Yeah.
But I love it when people can recognize, and this is probably one of the hardest things to do, is to abstain from a behavior that you've been so conditioned
Yeah.
that, that it brings you happiness. But to be able to abstain from that, to not go there, and yet still be able to find something to celebrate. That's one of the hardest things for people to do, is to go through that exposure therapy, to sit through the middle of your fear and realize that you didn't die, to not partake in emotional eating or compulsive shopping, and realize that you didn't die, that you're still okay. And you know what? If nothing else, I'm going to celebrate the fact that I'm still alive.
Yeah.
The fact that we can celebrate is where we can be, I mean, so joyful and so grateful when we can include that gratitude, that self-gratitude for what we are capable of doing, and to recognize that neuroplasticity is there, to recognize that society welcomes change. When you find the right people, the right tribe to surround yourself with, they cheer you on and they're right there celebrating with you. I think celebration is probably one of the most underrated coping mechanisms that we can employ in changing problematic behavior into something that we can overcome and turn into something that we can, say that used to be a problem for me, that used to be an issue. And now look at the amazing life that I have created for myself. And simply through the art of sitting in it for a minute, recognizing for what it is, abstaining from that behavior, and then celebrating the good that came from changing. I think that's just absolutely remarkable. Absolutely
and I
remarkable.
think as well that it kind of make us look to the things that are working.
Yes.
Instead of what not work. We are very good at look at everything that's not working, all the negative, instead of looking at what is working, what did I do well, what worked. And that's what I usually do very in the beginning with my clients. We go into evaluation. And every time there's 3 questions we always do, the evaluation is always what worked, is always the first question. What didn't work and what would I do differently? And it's very interesting to see how challenging it is for them to come up with what worked. But also, as soon as they come up with all the lists, I keep asking, what else? What else? What else? Even if it's a tiny bit, like I slept a half an hour more than the night before, just like a little bit better. When it comes to what didn't work, the list is usually shorter, which is amazing, because what we focus on always is what didn't work. It kind of feels like it's a huge list of what didn't work, but actually what worked, what went well is usually the bigger list than what didn't work. So we need to focus on that. And then as soon as we finish the evaluation is celebrate that. How are you going to celebrate that?
I love it. Pam, you are doing some good things in this world.
Remarkable.
I'm so that's such a fun conversation. I can geek out all day long on that.
Me too.
Yep.
We can talk about it all day long. So you're online, you're everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, and your website, which we will link them all up in the show notes.
And the podcast too.
And the podcast too. Yes, the podcast too, which is super awesome. Where else should we send people to find you if they want to interact with you more?
So I'm mainly on Instagram more than Facebook. So it's Pamella Arnold Coaching, and Pamella with double L. And on my website, PamelaArnold.com.
Cool. Awesome.
Wonderful. We will link you up and make sure people know how to get a hold of you. Like I said, this was a really popular topic. And if you need to re-listen to the entire show, just inserting, whatever your vice is. So one little happy hack, one action step that our listeners can do right now to make their home, head, or health a happy place.
So what I want to say is that I'm sure that if you celebrate what you've done well today, only today, let's not even talk about yesterday or the day before, just today, you are going to have a happy home with a happy head and a happy health, because the celebration will give you a very good dopamine hit in your brain. You're going to feel good about yourself. And what I like to do, that's my thing. You can find your own thing. I love dancing. I'm Brazilian. I am a Latina girl. So I love my moves, and I have moves, I gotta say. So I love dancing. And I do that usually every day, but usually in the end of my workout, I just celebrate the fact that I went and I did my workout and I feel good about it. Happy dance, shaking my booty, and I feel good. So there's so many different ways that we can celebrate. Just find something that makes you feel happy, even if it's just a pat in your back or a little hug or look in the mirror and say, I love you, babe.